Today, I'd like to talk about BRIC nations, BRIC, BRIC countries. That is Brazil, Russia, India, and China, BRICS. These four nations are considered to be representing the developing world or emerging world today. Because these countries have a very large population. In the case of India and China, they have more than 1 billion people each, or they have a very large land area with a lot of resources. Russia and Brazil, with agricultural resources or the energy resources. Their growth, the GDP size is indicated here, where China is the largest, more than 17 trillion US dollars in real terms, in PPP terms. Actually, China is the world's largest, just surpassing the United States in terms of real GDP, in PPP terms. Followed by India, the third largest in the world, whereas the Brazil and Russia tend to have a little bit less amount of GDP in real terms. However, per person, per capita, since India and China each has so many people, the per capita income for India and China seems to be rather low compared to the Brazil and Russia. But overall, Brazil, Russia, and China seem to have middle income levels, and then India is rapidly catching up. The question is whether these four nations are going to break out of the middle income trap or not. That's an interesting question. And to see that, we will examine the recent growth performance of these four countries. Here are the growth rates of these four nations from 2007 through 2013. Just by looking at all these numbers, you can easily see an interesting contrast between Brazil and Russia on one hand, and India and China on the other, in the sense that the Brazil and Russia seem to have been experiencing a kind of fluctuations in growth performance. Back in 2007 and 2008, these countries seem to have achieved very high growth rates, but then due to the financial crisis, both experienced a negative growth. Especially in the case of Russia, the economy almost collapsed because of the sharp decline in energy prices due to financial crisis. And they seem to have recovered a little bit, but then going down to a 1% level, virtually no growth, and in fact, Russia is now experiencing a negative growth as of today. In contrast, India and China have experienced a very impressive growth performance, almost double digit, with a little bit of a slowdown in the case of India due to financial crisis, but still 3.9% growth. And then by 2010, they recovered the double-digit growth rates. Then India experienced a little bit of a cyclical fluctuations, whereas China seems to be really slowing down up to date. Let's look at the overall common factors for these four nations first, namely common characteristics for BRIC nations. First, as I already pointed out, they have either large population and or large land area with a lot of natural resources. The second characteristic is they are all already regional powers. China in East Asia or Asia as a whole, and India in South Asia, Brazil in South America, and Russia in the former Soviet Union the region. They all represent the developing world, the emerging world. And at the same time, they try to be a global player, confronting the Western countries by holding the BRIC summit every year to show off their kind of power and so-called solidarity. Most recently, they proposed and then already started to create a new development bank to support the infrastructure investment, for example, in developing countries, in an attempt to replace or to offer alternative to already existing international organizations such as the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, etc., which were created by the Western countries. It is interesting to see the similarities and contrasts among these BRIC nations. You can see the Russia and China on one hand versus Brazil and India on the other in terms of state capitalism for Russia and China versus market capitalism for Brazil and India. And under state capitalism, Russia and China tend to have a unified industry policy to support targeted industries, namely energy industries in the case of Russia and manufacturing industries in the case of China. On the other hand, Brazil and India under market capitalism tend to lack any unified industry policy. They are very fragmented or the diversified industry policies. So that resulted in the specialization in industrial structure, especially in the case of Russia. They specialize in the energy sectors, whereas the industry is very much diversified, especially in the case of Brazil, which has all sorts of industries from agriculture to high-tech aerospace, like the manufacturing and exporting aircrafts. That's one kind of classification. The second one is to have India and China on one hand, and Russia and Brazil on the other. In terms of large labor force for India and China versus abundant natural resources for Russia and Brazil. Because of this difference, economic performance, growth performance, has been sharply different from each other. India and China have shown a steady high growth performance, whereas the Russia and Brazil have been suffering from rather unstable economic fluctuations due to the fluctuations in the resource prices in agriculture and energy sectors. With all these heterogeneous countries together, what future holds for these BRIC nations is an interesting question, and that holds the key for the future of the developing economies in the world.